Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Evening all, we'll just wait for everyone to join us. Just take a moment. Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting for everyone to join us. I think we're probably just about there, and then we'll get going. Okie doke. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next instalment of Naturetrek's online winter roadshow. This evening, we are visiting the Far East. My name is Kerry Porteous. I'm one of the operations managers at Naturetrek, and I'm joined by three of my colleagues from the office this evening. So they are Paul, Stanbury, Matt, Eade, and Tom Mabbett, all from our operations team.
Hello.
And we are also honoured to be joined by one of our excellent tour leaders, Neil McMahon. So I will let them all introduce themselves a little bit more as they come to speak in turn. So we've had some more positive news from the travel industry this week. The day 2 lateral flow test has been ditched from the 11th of February, so that's good news. That's really the last bit of testing requirement from the UK side of things. We've already lost the pre-returning test. Now this is the one on your return itself. So now, from UK requirement wise, the only thing you need to do is fill in the online passenger locator form before returning to the UK, which before long we'll all be extremely familiar with, so not something to be worrying about. So that's great. It's been a good boost for the travel industry. We've had a very, very busy week ourselves, taking lots of bookings, especially for lots of spring tours. It's clear there's plenty of you out there with very itchy feet, having 2 years of being far too cooped up. So if you're another person with itchy feet and fancy getting away, then have a look at our late availability pages on the website. There's still some tours there with space, so have a look and maybe get something booked, get traveling again in the next few months. So this evening we are going rather further afield. We're off to the Far East. We're going to start the evening in Borneo and then going to Thailand. We'll take a short break for about 10 minutes at 8:15, and then we'll finish the evening in Cambodia and Japan. If you have any questions as we go through the evening, then as always, please don't hesitate to use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen or the side, depending on where you're viewing us. Pop your questions in there. We'll answer some of them as we go through the evening, and we'll pick them all up at the end as well. It's about 9:05. So that's about it. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tom Mabbett. He's going to kick off the evening by taking you all to beautiful Borneo. Over to you, Tom.
Great stuff. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much. And yeah, hello, everyone. Once again, my name's Tom Mabbett. I'm one of the operations managers here at Naturetrek, and I look after a whole number of tours here, there, and everywhere, really, from weekends in the UK to tours to Borneo and Brazil and Guyana and lots of other fantastic destinations. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to take you for a little whistle-stop tour around covering our tours to the fantastic island of Borneo and some of the incredible wildlife you can see there and what to expect with a visit out to Borneo. So Borneo is the third largest island in the world, and all of our current itineraries, we have 4 itineraries currently, and they all focus on the northeastern state of Sabah, which is Malaysian, and that's where all our tours are based. And I'm going to follow, after this slide, I'm going to roughly follow the itinerary of our Dramakot forest itinerary, our sort of mammal focused fabulous itinerary. I'm going to follow that and then touch on some of the other reserves as well. So on most of our tours, we'll fly in to start off in Sandakan, just a little geography here, and then we'll visit the wonderful the Kinabatangan River, which runs across here, Tabin, which is over here just to the east of Lahadatu, and the Danum Valley, which is around this area here, and also Mount Kinabalu is fantastic as well for a complete contrast to your lowland forest. So lots of fabulous places to explore. So as I said, we start our itinerary for the Dramakot tour with a flight into Sandakan, and from there it's just a very short drive to the fantastic Sepalok nature resort. which is very famous, of course, for its orangutan rehabilitation centre, which is just a very short walk from our accommodation, and we'll make an effort to visit the orangs at least once during our one-night stay. We're just staying there to get over the flight to some hutlers. It's a brilliant place to sort of ease ourselves into it, and some lovely habitat there as well. So this is a big male orang which is coming down for some fruit that's been put out to bring these animals back in and just support them a bit. So these animals are free to do what they want. They can go where they want. It's a really nice patch of rainforest, and they return to take a bit of an offering of food to just to help them along the way. So these animals you see here have all been given a second chance in life, and it's an amazing place to visit and support as well, of course, and get amazing close-ups of these incredible great apes. Also from Sepalok, you have the Sun Bear Rehabilitation Centre as well. So that's a bit more recently opened, and we'll visit that area and see this lovely bear close up and learn about the species and their conservation. Again, these two sites are within walking distance of our accommodation, so it's a really nice start. Also here is the Rainforest Discovery Centre. As I said, it's a lovely little tract of forest here, and there's a bit of a canopy walkway, and we can do some night walk as well on our first evening. So we get straight into it, and this is a beautiful Bornean bristlehead here. This is one of the endemics that we hope to find, and the canopy walkway is a lovely lovely opportunity to look out through the forest and pick out some of these star birds. Great for some of the broadbills and Wallace's hawk eagle. We had great views off here. Lots of great birds. Chance for some reptiles as well. Great for the snakes there. And after our one night at Sepalok, we've settled in. We've seen some brilliant wildlife, and we then travel to the Duramakot Forest Reserve. And this is a view over that reserve. It's about 55,000 hectares. And it's a brilliant example of sustainable logging. So it's a working forest reserve, and they sort of rotate their very selective logging. So some areas are left fully protected, others are logged every sort of 40 years, very selectively. And it's won awards for the way it's sustainable management. It's actually been shown that some species, including possibly our main target here, the Sunda-clouded leopard, might actually increase and benefit from this management with an increase of some prey species. It's very interesting what's happening there, and it's a superb reserve. And this is a view over the top of Duramakot. So you're visiting Duramakot for the wildlife. It's not a luxury lodge. It's not built for tourists. It's a working forestry reserve, and they've thought, wow, we've got some incredible wildlife here, and people want to come and see it. So we're going to do our best to preserve it alongside our forestry work, and we're going to welcome people here and to stay at our headquarters, and we're going to allow them to get out at night in particular and cover this whole maze of tracks that run across this huge reserve. And that's exactly what we do. It's fantastic, of course, in the day, but it's the night that we're really focusing on here. And it's extremely exciting tour and amazing to get out at night. So we base ourselves in these two chalets here. It's a short walk down to the dining area, and it's a super place. Rooms are clean, comfortable, air conditioned, but it's not a fancy lodge like you can find in other areas, which I'll touch on later. So in the daytime, just wandering around the lodge, there's some super birding, lots to enjoy. This is a whiskered tree swift. Stunning bird, and can be seen very regularly as we're just doing some light birding in the daytime, recharging the batteries a bit. There's some nice trails, and some lovely species can be seen. And the smallest raptors in the world, the Bornean falconet, endemic to Borneo. So this is tiny little bird, feeds on butterflies and very small insects mainly. There's a couple of pairs around the lodge grounds. Absolutely tiny little bird. When you look at the measurements and the weight, it's barely larger than the bullfinch. Incredible. Much larger is the red-bearded bee-eater. This is a species we're likely to see hawking insects from the wires and the posts, just having an amble around the lodge. What a stunning bird that is. And all 8 of Borneo's hornbill species have been recorded at Dramacots. This is the rarest of the lot. This is helmeted hornbill with that really large sort of casque you can see there on the bill, used for jewels with the males, and this incredibly long tail. And we've got a chance of seeing it. It's one of the, as I said, the rarest of the 8, but we'll certainly see a number of other species of hornbill as well whilst we're out and about exploring. It's great for orangs. I'm often asked, where should I go to see wild orangs? Dramacot's great. This guy was just outside our lodge. It's not a great photo. All these photos are actually taken on the tour. They're either by myself or by leaders. None of them are sort of stock photos. So this could give you an example of what you can actually achieve. This chap was stripping bark off this palm. You just hear it ripping away and right outside our rooms. And a really fantastic experience, and a great chance to see them at Dramacot, also on a Kinibatangan and other reserves as well. They're doing well here. We saw family parties. We saw 13 different individuals on my visit back in 2018. Superb. Chance of a Bornean pygmy elephant as well. Sometimes they'll wander into the grounds, and we've got a good chance of seeing them in the daytime and night as we're crisscrossing the forest tracks. But as I said, it's all about the night. It's about the night time here, really. There's some nice activities in the day, but we're all gearing up for the night time. And this is the sort of vehicle that will head out on our night drives, open top. We're scanning around with a very powerful spotlight, hoping to catch eye shine, to intercept animals moving around their territory. So very, very exciting. So this is one species. We never say you're guaranteed to see anything, obviously, of course, in wildlife tourism, but you're very, very likely to see a buffy fish owl, and it's a fabulous species. You see them often. You get quite blasé about them on sort of night 2 or 3 or 4, but yeah, they're amazing. Really, cracking owl, and they're often found in the sort of wetter areas. They'll drop onto the floor and take amphibians. You often see them stood on frogs and fish at times, and yeah, super species we're very likely to find. We're also likely to see a whole number of different civets when we're out spotlighting, and there's so many weird and wonderful mammals in Borneo. Our main quest is of course to try and intercept sunder-clouded leopard, and Dramacot's one of the best places in Borneo to find the cat, and cats are on our mind. But as we're traveling around, we're seeing a whole range of incredible mammals, and you can sometimes come away from this trip seeing in excess of 40 different species of mammals. It's quite amazing. So I'm just going to cover some of those really, really cool mammals in the next few slides. This is Malay civet, probably the most commonly encountered civet as we're crisscrossing this amazing reserve. Always on the ground. It's opportunistic. It'll feeds on a whole array of different foods, eggs and birds and nuts and seeds. Very sort of omnivorous, and yes, really beautiful civet. It's black and white markings on the chest. Really, really special. So the Malay civet, often on the ground. You get the spotlight up in the trees, and you'll find the Bornean palm civet. So this is very much arboreal. So the really long tail, you can see, perfect for working its way through the branches. Often find the fruiting fig trees, any trees with fruit, and really focus on those. And as we travel around, we'll start to realize during this time which where these hotspots are, where these trees are, that we're going to really dial in on and focus on. And yeah, the wildlife in these rainforests, they know where these trees are, and they home in. So this is just another species we hope to see. This is banded civet, one of the rarer civet species, and they were thought to really need primary untouched forest, but they're found at Dramacot. Just shows the fantastic habitat that's found here, despite this very selective logging. So it's very interesting that they're found here, and we have fairly frequent sightings. And these will be just wandering around again on the ground. They've got very fine sort of hairs on the pads of their feet to sense worms and insects and things in the leaf litter. Really, another really stunning civet species we hope to find. I'm gradually getting more and more bizarre. Now this one really is a strange one. This is the otter civet, rarer still than the banded, and it really is pretty much a cross between an otter and a civet. Very, very aquatic. Has its ears will sort of close up. It's got these really long whiskers that you can see here, and that sort of muzzle. So very, very adapted for hunting in water and sensing things with those long whiskers. And really, you need a bit of rain. You need it to sort of a wetter environment to have a bit of a better chance of seeing otter civet, moving around a bit. They're very, very tricky to see, but we've had a few good sightings. Here's a shot from one of our tours. Another strange one is the binturong. Amazing species, a big sort of black hairy civet, also called the bear cat. This one resting up in a fig tree. Not a brilliant photo, is one of mine. This one of the wonderful binturong. And very interesting, if you've ever seen one in the wild or at parks, they smell really strongly of popcorn. They've got a funny sort of gland that releases this scent. It's quite amazing. Beautiful animal. Philippine slow loris. We're very likely to come across slow loris as we're touring around the reserve, spotlighting, shining up and down trees. And another amazing species. They've got a gland under their armpits. When they mix that with their saliva, the secretion from this gland with their saliva, it makes a toxin, which is used to fend off parasites, leeches, and ticks and things, and also can be used. It's quite their saliva becomes quite toxic. Can be used for taking small insects and things. A really fascinating species, and we're likely to see them as we're touring around. Lots of different flying squirrels. This is Thomas's flying squirrel. We're likely to see red giant flying squirrel, black giant flying squirrel. Lots of these species that glide through the canopy, big folds of skin, as you can just sort of see here on this Thomas's flying squirrel. And this just shows you we're spotlighting. I often get asked, can you still take photos? You're out spotlighting. Sometimes you'll get them in the spotlight and they'll move away quite quickly, but more often than not, I would say that you get good views, and this is an example of that. This is a photo I've taken just with a point and shoot really of a Thomas's flying squirrel. So you can get some nice photos. And this is the master of gliding mammals really. This is the wonderful Kalugu, with a youngster just sticking its head out of the skin here under these big folds of skin. So they'll just launch themselves from tree to tree and glide. We're known to glide over sort of 100 meters, just barely losing any height. Amazing gliders, these animals, and they just hang upside down in the daytime. And if you spot them in the day, it's sort of what on earth is that? And then they start to move around their territory at night and become far more active. This is the moon rat. Really amazing little species. Can sometimes even smell a moon rat before you spot them. Very smelly animal, living in these little wet ditches looking for worms. And it's more closely related to hedgehogs actually than to rats. Essentially a big white rat, the moon rat. Moving on to some prey items for the cats. Then this is a mouse deer. You have greater and lesser mouse deer, and with the sort of some areas of the forest being being cleared and very selective logging, it gives a bit more space, and it's these deer like that sort of environment, and a higher density of deer, of course, is good for you. It's good for the predators, good for the cats. So these deer are tiny. They're a really large rabbit would be comparable in size. They're tiny little deer. It doesn't really show you that in this photo. So onto the cats. There's 5 cats. This is a leopard cat. This is the most common. Very, very good chance of seeing leopard cats. I don't think we've ever missed leopard cat on the trips. You also have flat-headed cat, which is occasionally seen. Marbled cat. Again, occasionally seen, but tricky. The near mythical bay cat, which we've never seen and is incredibly rare. And then, of course, the wonderful cinder-clouded leopard, and that's really why we're here. This is what everyone's hoping to see. It's very hit or miss. We're really aiming to intercept this animal as it's moving around its territory. This is a photo of the first cat that was ever seen on the Naturetrek tour to Dramakot. So just walking its territory, heading straight towards a vehicle and not put off at all. So we have seen them. They just carried on their business and walked right past the vehicle, often with their mouth agape like this. So they're sensing their prey through sort of the scent in the throat. So they tend to always walk around with their mouth open like this, sensing things. And you can see the really long tail here. Stunning cat. This is a really great photo to show those long canines, and they'll take their prey with a bite to the back of the back of the neck. So males are larger than females. Males will take prey up to the size of bearded pigs, and guides up there even said they've seen clouded leopards attacking orangs up in the canopy. Quite incredible. So really powerful predator, these big canines. The females are smaller. They're more likely to take smaller prey, some of the squirrels and langurs and other primates. This is just another photo of how close one of our groups got to this animal. Just walked within meters of the vehicle, squeezing past to stay on the track. This is the sort of views you dream of course. And these cloud-shaped marks on their coat is what gives them their name. And a different species, they say Sunder-clouded leopard is now a different species from the clouded leopard found on the mainland. So a good example here with those cloud shapes on the legs in particular there. Stunning cat, that beautiful long tail, perfect for working through the canopy. So after a week, 7 nights at Dramacot, touring around every night, spotlighting, really going for it on the mammal front. We leave and we head for 3 nice, more relaxing nights on the Kinibatangan River. We'll stop off at the Gomantong Caves and have a really nice walk in here. Incredible habitat. This is all guano or rat droppings covered in insects, and you can see a number of different bat species in here, and lots of the swiftlets, the edible nest swiftlets and black swiftlets. Lots of different species, and really fascinating to stop off and explore this cave system. And we'll then have 3 nights on the Kinibatangan. Amazing forest, corridor of forest lining the edge of the river, and we'll see a whole host of species here with lovely morning and afternoon boat rides, and it's a far more relaxed sort of final 3 nights to the tour. Proboscis monkey this is the place to see this amazing species. Big family parties, mainly you'll see lots of females and young. They'll often be the one sort of dominant male with them, always often in the branches hanging over the river. And it's a super place to see wild orangs on the Kinibatangan as well. So on a really close up we managed to have when feeding on fruits just on the edge of the river. So it's great spotting from the water, and there's lots to see, and it's a great place to see pygmy elephants and coming down to the water's edge and feeding on this vegetation. It's a huge river, so there's lots of areas to cover, and the guides often know where the herds have most recently been, and you can have a really good crack at seeing them. Lots of different kingfisher species, blue cheek beater here, and lots of animal wildlife to see around the lodge. Reptiles, amphibians, and pitcher plants is botanically very interesting. Lots and lots to enjoy. Tabin is a fabulous reserve, huge reserve. Tabin, we visit this on our shorter mammals tour, part of our bargain mammal range. Tabin's superb. Lots of fabulous bird species. Over 300 species of bird at Tabin. Lots of different pitters. Black-chested pitter here, and rhinoceros hornbill. Brilliant place to see pygmy elephant again. Working the gap, the perimeter between the fantastic forest reserve and then the plantations just on the outside of the reserves. They'll cover that sort of that area there. One of the best places in all of Sabah to see the gibbons, the North Bornean gibbon, and it's a wonderful sound in the morning to hear gibbons as you wake up, and again the spotlighting superb for leopard cat. And I always include a snake slide. This is my snake slide for tonight. This is a reticulated python we found, the world's largest snake, eating a pigtailed macaque, and that's the macaque's feet there as it's being consumed. So there's a bit of a grisly one for you there. An incredible slide. And I'll finish with a few slides on the Danang Valley. Absolutely incredible reserve, primary untouched forest here in the Danang Valley at the Borneo Rainforest Lodge down below us here. And this is we feature this reserve on our Borneo orangutans itinerary. It is the best place really in Sabah to see orangs, and they're studied here incredibly well. And some of the researchers following pretty much 24 hours a day, keeping tabs on them and learning about them. Brilliant reserve, incredible forest, and so much to enjoy. A wonderful canopy walkway, getting up there at dawn and just soaking up the atmosphere of this primary sort of untouched tract of forest that still remains. It's a place you just feel privileged to visit and support and make sure stays that way. This is a beautiful male orang that we managed to see with these big facial discs, these facial flanges there. Absolutely fantastic. As I said, the researchers there, follow these animals. And there's around 60 animals within easy sort of striking distance of the lodge. Sometimes they're just outside the lodge, or even sometimes in the grounds. Other times you have to walk further to reach them. But we got a very good chance of seeing them in the Danang Valley from Borneo Rainforest Lodge. And spotlighting again Western tarsier here, incredible species with these huge eyes, and just so much to enjoy there. And in complete contrast that we include on our birding itinerary is up in head up to Mount Kinabalu, and you get away from that sort of lowland rainforest habitat, and up here is this sort of mossy evergreen cloud forest. It's a real complete contrast, and a fabulous place to visit. A whole host of different species and very, very high endemism here. Lots of species found nowhere else, and this is a view of Kinabalu. So you don't need to climb high, you don't need to go up the mountain or anything to visit this area. There's lovely easy trails in the foothills and some fabulous birding. Look at the whitehead's trogon there. What a special bird that is. And there's so many other species to enjoy, and lots of different endemic tree shrews and squirrels. This is whitehead's pygmy squirrel. Lovely little creature. So I'll finish there. That's a really rapid whistle stop of some of the reserves we visit on our 4 Borneo itineraries. I can't wait to get groups back out there. And I'll just finish with this shot of primary untouched forest taken on one of the hikes you can do in the Danang Valley. And I just remember looking at this view and just thinking how privileged I was to be looking over this habitat that still remains. And I'm a strong believer that people need to visit these places to make sure that this view remains in place, and it's home to some absolutely incredible wildlife. And so getting out there helps of course with preserving it. So thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop there. I've gone a couple of minutes over, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague Matt, who's going to take you to Thailand and some more fantastic birding. Over to you, Matt. Cheers.
That's great, Tom. Thank you very much for that, and a very good evening, everyone. My name is Matt, and I work I'm in the operations team at Naturetrek, and tonight I'm going to take you to Thailand. Currently, we have 2 tours to Thailand. One is a 10-day tour, but since I spoke to you last year on Thailand, I've introduced a new 17-day tour, just to encompass further sites in the north and in the central regions as well. So hopefully tonight I'll be able to give you a good exploration of this new tour. Okay, so this is a map of Southeast Asia with Thailand in the center there, and the red arrows here represent the new sites on this new tour. So we go to a few different areas in the center there, namely Kang Krachan and the province of Phetchaburi, further sites in there. Then right up in the far north, we head up to Doi Lang, which actually straddles the Burmese border. So it's a very exciting region to go birding in. And the blue arrows is what is in the 10-day tour, but it's included in the 17-day tour as well. Okay, so we're going to start off in the Gulf of Thailand, and I'm sure, as you can see, the Eade capital of Southeast Asia. Now, this is a superb area for wintering birds, and in any afternoon, you could see upwards of 30 species of Eade, which is quite incredible and will be very hard to come by anywhere else in the world. So we spent a couple of days here, and these are the sort of views that you would expect to see through a telescope, or you can also get extremely good views as well. And a lot of the flocks here are mixed Eade flocks. So there's plenty of sandplovers here of both species, the greater and the lesser sandplover. But as you can see, just on the right-hand side there's a curlew sandpiper, a redneck stint, and also a broad-billed sandpiper as well. So it's a really exciting region to go birding in, because you're not sure what you're going to come across in these flocks. So some of the commonest waders that you are likely to see here, this is the marsh sandpiper, extremely common throughout the salt pans. Of course, a scarce passage migrant to the UK, but extremely common out there and very nice to see, and they show extremely well as well. Now, the redneck stint, this is the smallest waders that occur in the salt pans, and closely followed by the Temming stint here, which is on the left, and the long-toed stint, which is on the right. So this is just some of the commonest species that you would expect to see on your first afternoon in Thailand. Thankfully, it's only a 90-minute drive from Bangkok airport, so as soon as you land, you're pretty much out birding straight away. But of course, the reason why lots of bird watchers come to Thailand is to see the specialist wader species, and some which are critically endangered and also near to extinction as well. So the first up here, this is the Asiatic dowitcher, an extremely rare bird in Southeast Asia. And each winter, roughly 50 birds winter around these salt pans in the Gulf of Thailand. However, at Pak Tale, which is this site here, there's normally only between 5 or 10 birds that winter here. So it's a very hard to see species, but most tours we do see them. Of course, in the foreground as well, you've got some black-tailed godwits there, very similar to the dowitcher. And of course, you've got some black-winged stilts as well. But of course, the main reason why people come to Thailand, and especially Pak Tale salt pans, is to see one of the most iconic species of bird in the world. And that is this one here, the spoon-billed sandpiper, an absolute superb bird. And there's fewer now, well, there's now fewer than 200 breeding pairs in the world. So they breed up in northeast Russia, and they migrate south, and majority of the birds winter around these parts, and also in China as well. Now, the reason for their decline is that their breeding grounds are fine, their wintering grounds are suspect, but it's the passageway on their way south. There's not enough resting stops for these birds to recover, and that is why they are not doing so well. And they are certainly could well be on the extinction list in the next century. So a very special bird to see, and it is a real privilege to see a spoon-billed sandpiper on these salt pans. So there it is there. Again, in with a nice mixed flock. So we've got a Kentish plover and redneck stint on the right, and as we trail left, a lesser sand plover as well. But it's a spoon-billed sandpiper is what we're here to see. And there's a close-up photo of it with its wonderful spatula-like bill. An absolute superb bird. So while we're down in the coast, we do take a boat trip out onto a sand spit. So we first go through these mangroves, and here's where we hope to see the Chinese egret, quite a rare bird, in fact, in the Gulf of Thailand, despite being so close to China. So again, a very special bird to see, and easily identifiable by the paler legs, the paler bill, and the long fluffy crest as well. Now, once we're out on the sand spit, these are the birds, again, that we're hoping to see. To increase our wader list, we could easily end up with 35 species of wader if we're lucky in the afternoon. And this is the Malaysian plover, showing off its bright chestnut nape on the back of its head. And this chap, the white-faced plover. Now, this bird has actually recently been split from the Kentish plover. It's quite hard to understand why it was ever lumped with Kentish plover, but now rightly it is its own species. So once we finished off on the coast, we head inland to Phetchaburi rice fields and cultivations, and this is where we hope to see one of Asia's most rapidly declining breeding birds, and this is the yellow-breasted bunting, once abundant across East Asia and also a regular migrant here to the UK. It's now extremely rare here in the UK, but equally so in East Asia, and that's because most birds are illegally trapped for food. So it's a very sad state of affairs for this bird, and again, another bird which could soon well be on the extinction list. Okay, so once we finished up in Phetchaburi, it's quite a quick tour I'm giving you this evening, so please bear with me. But we head now to Kang Kretchen National Park, which is very close by to the salt pans, roughly an hour drive inland, and we stay on the outskirts at this wonderful lodge. This lodge is, in fact, owned by a bird watcher, a very keen birder, and the grounds are set up specifically for European birders. So there's many clearings and hides and feeding stations for the birds to come down. So the photographic opportunities are also superb. So here's just a little photo of the accommodation there. And this site does have its own small lake as well. So of an early morning or late afternoon, you can come down to the lake and, for example, watch stork-billed kingfishers kingfishing away, cinnamon bittern in the reeds, black-browed reed warblers. The list is endless. It really is a fantastic place for bird watching and resting as well. So very close by to this lodge, again owned by the same guy, is this clearing roughly a 5-minute drive away on the outskirts of the national park. And here a screen has been set up with a small pond in the middle, and it's basically been set up to view these forest-dwelling species, birds that you probably almost certainly would not see in the forest interior, just because it's so the birds are so elusive. So some of the birds we expect to see here is the oriental magpie robin. Now this is a common bird throughout Asia. However, it's surprisingly tricky to find in Thailand, but at these clearings, it's actually quite easy to see. So just a good reason as to why these clearings have been put in. Greater necklace laughing thrush is another great bird to see, and laughing thrushes roam through the undergrowth in large feeding flocks, so they're very easy to keep track of. White rump shama, this is another hard to see bird in the forest interior, yet at this clearing. Most birds come down and have a nice wash. And as you can see from my photos here, the views are exceptional as well. Puff-throated babbler, another very tricky bird to see in the forest interior, but here we are, just on the edge of the small pond, and they come down in very large numbers and again show extremely well. You probably can see from the photos that they are quite grainy. That is because it is late afternoon, early evening, so the light is very low. But again, this is probably the main bird to see at these hides. This is a Siberian blue robin, a wonderful male. And it's actually quite interesting when you're at this hide in the late afternoon, because the first few hours, the females come in and they kind of tease you, and then the younger males come in, and then eventually, just as light really starts to drop, the males come in, and it really is a wow moment to see a Siberian blue robin in its wonderful plumage there. Stunning bird. And last but not least, a bird that is practically impossible to see in the forest, but quite easy at these clearings. This is a slaty-legged crake, and that showed extremely well. It came out a couple of meters in front of me, so I had to remain very silent whilst I got this photo. A wonderful birding area. And as Tom saw in Borneo, you can also see in Thailand, this is a mouse deer. Again, almost impossible to see out in the open, but very nice, easy here with the fruit for it as well. A really wonderful species. Righty, so that is our area pretty much around Phetchaburi province, around the Gulf of Thailand. So for the next part of the trip, we head north of Bangkok. It was only by about a 1-hour drive, and we head to Kariai National Park. This is a superb national park full of birds, but it's also really good for mammals as well. So especially the rarer mammals, chance of clouded leopard here, black bear, smooth-coated otter, just some of the mammal species that you're likely to see here. Really great area. And what's different here from Kang Krachan is that there's many forest trails throughout the national park, so it's really easy to get off the main road and into the forest proper. Really great place. Great hornbills are really common here, and you can often hear them before you see them because their wings are so broad. They really do make an amazing sound when they fly over. An absolutely superb bird. Long-tailed broadbills. Now, broadbills are certainly interior birds, but they're extremely brightly coloured, and they move around in large flocks as well, so quite easy to keep track of. And this cartoon character-like long-tailed broadbill is surely a must-see bird in the avian world. It really is a cracking species. Another broadbill, the black and yellow broadbill, Once again, another superb bird, much smaller, but they give off a very high-pitched noise and are highly detectable as they usually sit out on exposed branches. And just look at the base of that blue bill there. I mean, you can understand why it's called broadbill. An absolute superb bird. Now with East Asia, of course, what most people want to see are pitters. Now pitters are highly secretive, and I'm sure for those of you that have seen pitters in Asia or maybe Africa, Australasia, that any view of a pitter is a very special moment in the birding scene. And in Thailand at Kariao National Park, you can see at least 2 species of pitter, whether these are at clearings in the forest or just along footpaths. And at Kariao, you can get the best of both. So this bird was at a clearing, this blue pitter, which came in to feed quite late on in the afternoon. But also there's a chance of eared pitter, and these can be seen along the footpaths and mostly detectable by rummaging around in the undergrowth. You can often hear them moving the leaves, tossing the leaves around, and that's just how you detect an eared pitter. And this is a rather distorted view I got of one when I was last in Thailand, but once again, an incredible sighting, and just goes to show how great Kariao National Park really is. Now we will have a few early excursions out of the melt, and this is really to catch up with the pheasants. One such as Siamese fireback, an absolute wonderful bird, is certainly one we should see on the roadside. So you don't really have to go traipsing through the forest. This bird is most often seen alongside the road. But if you do go into the forest, you can often hear them displaying, and that is when you get to see their fire-coloured back. It really is a sight to see, and yeah, you just have to go there. It's absolutely wonderful. Now, another sought-after bird by bird watchers around the world, the coral-billed ground cuckoo. Once again, a forest dweller and really tricky to see. Some years they're quite easy and some years they're near impossible. Thankfully, the year I went, they were quite easy because there were free birds around a feeding area and they were highly reliable. But this bird is certainly not guaranteed, but we certainly tried for it. Thankfully, our guide is a local guide, so he's always in the know of what's about and where the best sites are for these birds. So coral-billed ground cuckoo is certainly a target bird on this tour. Now, as I said, Kariao is also really good for mammals. East Asian porcupines can often be seen roaming around the campsites at night. Really great species there. And white-handed gibbons. These often perform a wonderful dawn chorus across the forest, and can often be seen during the day as well. You've got to go to more open areas to see them because Kariao is rather flat. It's not very hilly, so it's quite hard to get an angle on the trees. But more often than not, you will come across a white-handed gibbon on this tour. And lastly, for the mammals, Kariao is excellent for Asian elephants as well, and especially in the cleared areas, just along the main road as well. So again, the reason why we stay outside the national park, so we stay in a really nice hotel just outside, and really the main reason for that is to avoid the temptation of walking the forest trails very early on in the morning, because this is more than likely where the elephants will be. So to avoid that or further complications, we make sure we arrive slightly later than first light to ensure that elephants have gone back into the forest. But you can get views such as this, you can be very lucky. It's a wonderful place. So now we're going to head up to the far north, and there's 2 main sites that we visit here. Doi Antanon, that is the highest point in Thailand. We spend a couple of nights here, and then we head further north up to the Burmese border, up to a site called Doi Lang, which is probably my most exciting bird watching spot in the entirety of Thailand. A really great area. So we start at Doi Antanon, and this is basically a single tarmac road all the way to the top, and there's a few forest trails along the way as well. And the same for Kariao, we stay just outside the national park, just so we can cover lots of ground within during the day. So this is the view from the very top. If you do join this tour, please take thermals, a warm coat, hat, gloves, because it is very, very cold at dawn. And we will be there for dawn on one morning to catch up with the many special birds that you can see near the summit. So Doriantonon is mainly known for its waterfalls, and along these waterfalls, of course, they're spectacular to see, but the birds here are also different from other sites in Thailand and that we visited so far. So blue whistling thrush, these are very common and act very much like blackbirds. Plumbeous redstart is another wonderful bird to see. White-capped redstart, another cracker, superb bird. But probably most sought after are the forktails. Now this is a slaty-backed forktail. This is one of 4 species of forktail that can be seen in the national park. And they're just wonderful. It's almost like a pied wagtail on steroids. Very large, chunky bird, really long forked tails, and they give off a very high-pitched noise. And that is basically so that noise can penetrate the flowing water. An absolute wonderful, wonderful family. So this is a Naturetrek group right up at the summit. And here's where we expect to see many special species. So dark-sided thrush, this is a great bird to see. This is a Himalayan speciality. So they breed up in the Himalaya, and during the winter, they come down into Southeast Asia, but very small numbers into Thailand. Gold sunbird is, again, another wonderful bird to see. And again, these can be seen only at the summits. So they're very altitudinal species. Okay, last but not least, sorry, that was a very short tour around Doi Antonon, and I just realised I'm slightly overrunning. So this is the area of Doi Lang. So this area straddles the Burmese border, and it's quite amazing. And that you can actually walk through the border into Burma and see some very special birds as well: white-gorgeted flycatcher, crested serpent eagle, and Himalayan cutia. Cutia is almost like pitters in the trees. A really wonderful bird, and as they bounce around the treetops. Now, Thai photographers set up a number of feeding stations along this road, and here's where we expect to see a number of Himalayan specialities again. So this is the male Siberian ruby throat, an absolute cracking bird, and they really do show this well. So these are the exact views that I had. Absolute wonderful bird. Rufous belly Nutava, once again another superb bird. An ultramarine flycatcher, again an absolute cracker, showing extremely well. And probably the most sought after on this mountain is the Hume's pheasant. Now, this isn't a great photo. This was seen very early in the morning and at low light, quite cloudy, misty, but an absolute striking pheasant, and certainly a bird that we hope to see on this tour. And giant nuthatch is the last bird that we really, really hope to see. Now, this was actually in Burma. Through the borders. You don't need a passport stamped or anything. You just walk through with the tour guide. But this is where we hope to see this globally threatened bird, the giant nuthatch. Probably twice the size, maybe 3 times the size of the nuthatch we see here in the UK. So a real cracking bird. So we end this 17-day tour. I'm on Doi Lang before catching a flight all the way back down to Bangkok. And this is a great area, a great time to witness the sunset over the Burmese mountains very close by. So these are the dates for 2023 for this 17-day tour. I really hope you can join us next year. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. But for now, thank you very much for listening. I will stop sharing my screen and hand you back to Kerry. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Matt, and thanks to Tom before you. We're only a couple of minutes over, so don't worry, guys. You've all got 6 minutes or so to go and top up your drinks, get a snack, whatever it is you need to do. And then we'll be back at 8:25 to join Neil in Cambodia and then Paul in Japan. Hello everyone, welcome back. Ready for round two. So I'm going to hand over to Neil now. As I said before, he's going to take us to Cambodia, then he'll hand straight over to Paul to take us to Japan to finish the evening. Keep the questions coming, use the Q&A in the chats, and we'll come to any that we haven't answered at the end. Over to you, Neil, if you're ready.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Kerry, and a very good evening to everybody. Welcome to Cambodia. What I hope to do is just give you an insight into the 17-day tours that we have organised now for nature trekkers, and we were last there in 2020, just before the pandemic struck. We actually managed to squeeze 3 17-day tours in just before March 2020. Since then, of course, we've actually altered the itinerary just marginally to make it a little bit more comfortable. But in general, the overall itinerary is the same. And what we hope to do is to try and ensure that you have an opportunity of appreciating the culture, both modern and historically, and also the fantastic wildlife. If you can see a little bit about some of the amazing temples we have on the west side of the country in particular, but also in the centre. And of course, we have to go to the UNESCO World Heritage Angkor Wat site. Quite amazing. Obviously, this is a bit of a sort of a plan view looking at it. But on our visit here, we will actually walk along that central flow that you can see and visit around the temples.
Neil, I'm going to interrupt you. We haven't got your presentation in front of us.
Ah, okay. Let me just come out then.
Have you gone to your share screen?
Let's have a look. Just trying to come out at the moment. It's finding it difficult to come out. All I'm getting is my right.
You got a frozen PowerPoint.
Yeah, hang on a minute. It's just reloading. Right. Just tell me when you've got.
Oh, this is looking good. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
So
take us to full screen and hopefully we're away.
Okay. Well, my apologies for those people who haven't been able to see the presentation to date. My apologies for that. Hopefully we'll catch up. I need to keep on online really. But what we're hoping to do during this 17-day tour is obviously get an opportunity of seeing lots of different wildlife. And this is a lovely crimson sunbird, gives an example of some of the lovely small birds we have. But the beauty of Cambodia is that we actually have an opportunity of seeing a whole diverse range of different disciplines of wildlife. This is a common flange tail, one of the more common but very impressive dragonflies that we would try and see, particularly around the Angkor Wat complex. And the beauty about the temples, of course, is that when we actually visit the temples, we're actually in sort of a wildlife reserve as well. So we have an opportunity of seeing primates and birds, most of which, unfortunately, I've had to march through just to keep on with the timing. So I'm going to move on to a place called Tonle Sap, which is a wonderful, large freshwater lake, which dominates the geography of Cambodia. And we have a wonderful day where we spend some time on the lake, and we get up at sunrise, hence the early sunshine, and we get a whole variety of amazing water birds, normally at very close range, such as this open-billed stork. There's a wintering population of whiskered terns that we get nice and close to, and some of the wildlife that we'll see there will be fairly familiar to European birders, but some will not, and some will be rather special, such as this grey-headed fishing eagle, which sometimes we get extremely close to. The beauty is that here we go onto a floating village, we capture a little smaller boat, we go to the floating village on a larger boat, we get onto a smaller boat, and then it allows us to go around some of the narrow channels around the lake, particularly on one particular reserve. And as you can see, we often get very, very close to a whole multitude of water birds. That was a Chinese pond heron, and other herons which are around in good numbers, intermediate egrets, which people who go to Asia will probably be fairly familiar with, but quite similar to this great white egret that's all over Britain now. And the yellow bittern is, if you like, a version of the little bittern from Europe, and we often get close views of those. but again, a bit of familiarity. So the grey heron has got a fantastic range right across Europe and Asia. And so we do experience grey herons as well, just to show a little bit of something we do know about. Purple herons, great favourites almost to any bird or almost anywhere in part of the world. And it's interesting that a lot of so-called birds that we think of as European extend right out over and in towards China and this side of Asia. Other birds we hope to see include the lesser adjutant stork, which is quite a rare bird. But we also hope to see the greater adjutant stork, which is even rarer. And really, Cambodia provides one of the few opportunities of seeing that, and also the milky stork, which is actually a very rare bird. And if you're into your bird watching, particularly the large birds, then there's a whole array of birds that really are only relatively easy to see in Cambodia, even if you've traveled around Thailand and lots of other places. But in these other countries and Cambodia, you would be familiar with things like painted storks, such as these. And at Tonle Sap, there's a very large colony of these painted storks, which we get good views of. And we hope to find the rarest storks actually in amongst them. But very graceful birds, gorgeous birds, and these feed around in the diminishing wetlands as the hot sun comes out, making prey far easier for them to see. We get extremely close to things like spot-billed pelicans, a little bit smaller than the great white pelicans that some people may be familiar with. But we do get very close indeed, as you can see from this flight shot as it went over the front of the boat as we were traveling along. Not such a good shot, but an impressive bird is the stork-billed kingfisher. And again, in an aquatic environment, of course, we're always going to see a whole host of kingfishers and allied birds, such as these blue-tailed bee-eaters, which actually occupy a whole range of habitats associated with that desire to catch large flying insects. And anywhere in the world, it's always great to catch a swallow, and this is the Asiatic barn swallow. You can see that it's very similar to our barn swallow, just a few little differences. And they winter there in large numbers, obviously, for the insects. So Tonle Sap, you could spend a good couple of days there, but sadly we only have for one day. So we try to sort of push as much into that as we possibly can. And the next area we go to is An Tram Piang Thamor, which is an interesting area where we hope to catch up with things such as Sarus cranes and a variety of owls. And here, this one is, as you can probably see, is a large owl which is hidden away. It's a spotted wood owl, and on the day when we actually spend some time in this general area, we actually hope to see sort of half a dozen species of owl. This is a similar species called the brown wood owl, which actually again hides well in the woodland, but the local guides seem to be pretty good at finding these birds for us, so we've always managed to see them. Bit of a job to see this bird. You have to look very hard in the centre of the screen to suddenly realise that there's a collared Scops owl sitting quietly in its little alcove. So a little bit of sunlight, a little bit of shadow, and a half-hidden bird. So if you can see that, congratulations. And this open area also is an interesting area for a whole range of other creatures. And one of the things we sometimes see is the spotted eagle, which we think of this one is probably the same as our European spotted eagle, although in actual fact it is possible, it would seem, to get Indian spotted eagle there as well. As like the whole world over, this raptor was in disagreement with the large crow of the region, which of course is the large-billed crow or jungle crow, which is a familiar bird in most of Asia. Again, in open areas with sort of agriculture and broken trees, very flat area, we encounter black-winged kites, which in Europe now seem to be doing extremely well. It depends where you go in the world, whether they're called black-winged kite or black-shouldered kite, but in essence, we call them black-winged kites generally. Asia can be a noisy place due to cicadas, so we'll certainly see and hear plenty of these wonderful beasts that live at least 7 years underground before they come out and emerge as an adult. And occasionally we'll find some receding water areas in this general area, which will look for things like comb duck, which is really good. And agriculture is a huge part of the Cambodian lifestyle. So most people live in a sort of third world regime, and it's very hot and dusty when we go there in the early year, but a great time to actually look for wildlife, and we'll see plenty of cattle. Chestnut cap bee-eater is a forest specialist that we'll see in some of the areas we go to, particularly when we go to some of the areas of woodland and the dry woodland areas which flood during the wet season. So here we've got rufous-tailed starlings, and the starlings actually do make up quite a large group of birds in Cambodia. So we'll probably see about 9 or 10 species. And the trip overall, we expect to see sort of round about just over 300 species of bird, and normally around about sort of 12 or 15 species of identified mammal. Common myna, if people do travel to Asia, they'll be fairly familiar with this bird, and we do tend to see them in decent numbers, of course. And the crested serpent eagle, which I think Matt has already showed us a shot of one of these. This is a younger bird, not quite as good looking as Matt shot, I don't think. Mammals sometimes can be hard to come by, but when we do find them, it's rather exciting, such as these gaur or gar, however you want to say them, which is a forest cow or cattle, very, very heavy cow. There was an endemic forest cow to Cambodia, but sadly that's now extinct. But there are still small numbers of these gaur, which we came across one night, which was all very exciting. There's a whole range of different lizards, and we do see quite a lot of them, including these tree-loving types, which are quite large and can sometimes be half a meter in length with their tail. And we do have an opportunity of seeing sort of some animals as well as simply birds and insects, and there's plenty of culture. And at one site in particular, as we're moving around, we hope to see northern tree shrew, which we did cheat a bit because we put some rice on the bird table, and this tree shrew, which I've never encountered before, came down to have a little feast. Striped tip babbler is very typical of the understory babblers that we encounter in this part of the world. There's a bird that's got a fairly large distribution. And in some of the in the dipterocarp forests, we hope to actually come across a whole range of different bird species, such as this grey-headed canary flycatcher. And yes, it's that same bird table again, but this time it's a red-billed magpie, one of the beautiful exotic Asiatic magpies. So much so that I always have a job of getting the tail in the shot. It's so long. Prinias make up quite a complex group of small birds, but this is a rufescens prinia. They're all quite difficult to see, but small, buzzy, warble-like birds that we hope to encounter in some decent numbers. And also the rufous-bedded woodpecker drills its holes almost in a sapsucker way and then goes back to them. So if you can find the holes on a tree, this much sought after bird can be found simply by revisiting the drilled holes. Rufous-winged buzzard is a small buzzard which inhabits woodlands, and we like to see those again in the same sort of forest area. And in this same environment, we'll be looking for things like giant ibis, white-shouldered ibis, which the giant ibis is Cambodia's national bird. One of the rarest birds in the world now, but doing reasonably well with some really good conservation efforts. And we're there partly to support those conservation efforts. So our visits will actually encourage the locals to pay more attention. But this isn't actually an ibis, as you might imagine. This is a savanna nightjar, which actually lives on the forest floor. It's a large nightjar, which I could never find, but local guides seem to be able to find them with ease. I don't know how they do it sometimes. As we move around Cambodia, we move further east, and as we do so, the terrain changes. We start seeing different bits of wildfowl, such as spot-billed ducks, which are a flock in flight. And we start seeing some wonderful insects as well, such as this clipper. And basically, this clipper is bigger than the size of my hand, so a rather wonderful large butterfly. Definitely a favourite of mine is the Tokai gecko, which surely must be one of the biggest geckos in the world, if not the largest. It's so big that it actually eats other geckos. Wonderful creatures that we tend to see normally at our abode, wherever we are staying. And in the daytime, if you disturb in the daytime, see how the eyes change and the pupils just simply disappear. But these rather large beasts, which can be up to about a foot long, marvelous things to see. So a nice distraction from the culture and the birds. Talking of culture, this is a Cambodian tractor. So it's only got 2 wheels plus a trailer. It's a very typical sight with this sort of big engine spouting out all sorts of fumes as it comes along, but you can definitely hear them coming. And yeah, and the locals are quite a bright, very, very pleasant group of people, I have to say. The Cambodians, very polite, very sort of very, very laid back. So you always have a really nice opportunity to see some of the locals. Well, this is a bird that's seen by very few people, which is the white-winged duck, but the itinerary does provide an opportunity, albeit a slim opportunity, to see the white-winged duck, which is now extremely rare. But really, Cambodia provides the only real opportunity of seeing this declining species, which sadly will probably be extinct in the next 30 years. We have an opportunity of, it's the only time we actually will be doing any camping on the tour is when we actually stay in a tent for one night in order to get close to the vulture restaurant. And this is a red-headed vulture, which is one of 3 species which are in particular decline in Asia. And so Naturetrek's opportunity of going out there actually provides more money and more resources to ensure that these rare vultures are preserved and looked after. So here you have the red-headed vultures together with white-backed vulture, and as you can see, which is the one on the left-hand side with the long black head, is a slender-bill vulture. So slender-bill vulture on the left-hand side, white-backed, and then red-headed. And then on the next shot, you just got 2 species, which is a slender-billed and the white one together, and a pork owl. Asiatic green bee eaters, got lots of very bright and beautiful birds in Cambodia. There are every turn, really. And if you're into your lizards, we do see quite a number of species. And this is one of the butterfly lizards that actually extends its pouches out with such lovely bright colors. A whole range of different butterflies are an option. I didn't actually identify this one specifically to a species, but this, I believe, is a peacock pansy. And certainly in sort of the forest areas, we get an opportunity to see some really nice insects, including this very large and beautiful yellow moth. We move over onto the east to look at the River Mekong, and the reason we go here is to try and see the Mekong wagtail and also the Irrawaddy dolphin, which are important parts of the itinerary. And when we're out there, this is the Mekong wagtail, which is believed to be restricted to the River Mekong and its tributaries only. It's a very distinctive species, quite like a really large black and white pie wagtail, but a specific species, which isn't quite an endemic, but is a near endemic. Irrawaddy dolphins, if you know about your river dolphins, you'll know that they tend to be quite shy animals, but every tour that we actually did out there, we saw the dolphins with comparative ease. So certainly if you want to see a beast like this, it's a great place to come and do that, as well as see the mighty Mekong, of course. In this particular area, we started seeing a few different bits of wildlife, such as this whip scorpion, which looks fearsome, but is actually quite harmless. And while we're over in the east, we actually have the opportunity of going to the Dak Dam Highlands and up against the Vietnamese border, which I don't think any other tour group goes to this part of the world at all. This provides a complete different flavor and gives us an opportunity to get into some more different primates, such as the black-shanked du langur, which is the one that's actually pictured here, albeit fairly distantly. And when we are in our comfortable lodgings and our comfortable hotels, we sometimes get the odd visitor, such as a large tree frog, which I think makes an awful lot more entertainment than just watching TV. And we did actually have an option of, we came across this warbler on one of our tours, which has been identified as a Clossy's leaf warbler, and it would appear that they're just starting to move into Cambodia from Vietnam. So this was a bird that we weren't anticipating seeing. So my apologies for the quality of the shot, but it's a small Philosopher's warbler that lives up into the canopy. For photographers, there is an opportunity with blue skies to get some reasonable shots of birds other than just water birds. This was Jurden's Baza that came over and doing a bit of display over one of the Dak Dam Highland areas we're at. And the black eagle was an unexpected find, but a bird that also came nice and close. We got some reasonable shots of that as well. The endemic, probably the only true endemic for Cambodia, bird-wise, is the Cambodian tailor bird, which is what this bird is. There is a partridge in the south, which is to be an endemic now as well, simply because its range has become more restricted. And there are lots of other near endemics. But if you certainly want to see some of the iconic birds associated with Cambodia, which you can really only see there, I haven't even mentioned Bengal florican, which is getting very difficult to see in other countries now, but there is a reasonably stable population, and we go to see that, and we see them every time. And I've mentioned the ibises and some of the storks, but it isn't just about everything that we can see there. It's also remembering the holiday, and you don't have to dress up to go to Cambodia. This is the standard dress. So if you're wearing pajamas, you want to wear pajamas all day. This lady was actually tending her sheep, but it was fairly typical of the Cambodia's very, very laid back style of life, and very, very pleasant. And the culture, both modern and historically, certainly enriches our trip out there as we enjoy the wildlife. Okay, I think that's me just about done. So if I can, I'm going to try and hand over to Paul And Paul's now going to talk to us a little bit about Japan. Hopefully, Paul, you're ready there for me.
I am, yes. I'm just trying to get my camera working. There you go. Right, phew. Okay, thank you very much, Neil. I'm now, as Neil says, going to talk about Japan once I've got the technology working. So just bear with me 1 second. Nearly there. Okay, right. Okay, so Japan in the winter. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Kerry mentioned, my name is Paul Stanbury. I work with Kerry in the Naturetrek office. I look after a range of different tours from sub-Saharan Africa, cruises, obviously Japan, some trips to South America as well. Been with Naturetrek over 25 years now, and occasionally get out to lead some tours as well, to get to do the fun bits as well as the interesting office work. So I'm going to be talking tonight on our Japan trip, our Wild Japan in winter holiday, and for both the keen naturalist and also for the keen photographer, this really is a fantastic holiday that offers some wonderful landscapes, some really interesting culture, great food, and of course some fabulous wildlife as well. So a brief overview here, a map of our main sites that we visit on the trip. We run these tours in January and February, the 12-day holidays with the option of doing an extension at the end. In the middle of the winter, we're going there at that time for a specific reason, of course, to see the red-crowned cranes up in Hokkaido and the wintering Steller sea eagles and the snow monkeys as well. So we start in Tokyo, down on the main island, Japanese island of Honshu. Then we move up to the northern island of Hokkaido, and that's where we're looking for the cranes and the eagles and Blackenstein's fish owl and some other really lovely wildlife. And then we move back down to Honshu again and take the bullet train over to Nagano, and here we go up into the mountains to enjoy look for the snow monkeys, Japanese macaques that bathe in the hot springs in the mountains. And then there's the option to extend the holiday down to the southern island, the western island of Kyushu, to look for the other wintering cranes down there and a range of other wildlife. So we start, of course, with a flight out to Tokyo. And on this tour, we really are immersing ourselves in Japan's unique culture and traditions, as well as the wildlife, staying in traditional Japanese inns, the opportunity to bathe in natural hot water springs called onsens, and sampling the delicious Japanese food that's on offer. But the trip will start with a flight, and we land in Tokyo. As you come in, if the weather's good, you might get a view of the snow-capped volcanic cone of Mount Fuji, the highest mountain in Japan at nearly 4,000 meters. But you will come in over Tokyo and get this incredible view of the city stretching out below you, and the population in Tokyo itself of 14 million people. But if you take the greater Tokyo area, then the population is 37 million, I think the most densely populated urban area in the world. But we fly into Haneda Airport, and then we have a night in Tokyo to relax after the flight, and just to have a little look around the city. So the city is an interesting place to explore. As you would imagine, in Japan, it has the most amazing public transport network. So it's very easy to get around the city. We'll take you to a little wildlife reserve called Kazurinkai Park, where you're going to see some interesting eastern birds. And there'll be also the opportunity during the course of the holiday to visit the temple as well in the middle of the city. Here there's a moat around the edge of the Imperial Palace is its name. So the Imperial Palace, and there's a moat around the edge of the palace, which in the winter is full of ducks, some familiar ones like widgeon and mallards, and some less familiar species such as eastern spot-billed duck and the beautiful falcated duck, one of the most attractive of duck species, with its beautiful iridescent green head and the long tertial feathers drooping over the wing. As well as the ducks around the wooded areas and the parkland around the Imperial Palace, we'll be seeing plenty of dusky thrushes, and the dusky thrush is the common species of thrush out in Japan in the winter time. There's the lovely little varied tit. There's also Dorian redstarts, bull-headed shrike. So it's just a nice introduction to some Japanese wildlife while we're just relaxing after the long flight. Then the following day, we fly north up to the northern island of Hokkaido. Unlike more temperate climate of Tokyo, which is quite similar to the UK in many ways. In the winter, they have their damper wet days, they have their cold periods, but Hokkaido is much further north and it's much colder than down in Tokyo, typically snow covered at the time of year that we visit. So we fly into the town of Kushiro, then we move north up through Tsuruuri, a bit of a mouthful, Tsuruuri, where the Japanese cranes reside. We have a couple of nights at Kauai, just to the north, and then we move across to Roadshow on the Shirotoko Peninsula, where we're looking for the Steller sea eagles and some of the other fantastic wildlife of the region. So we have 5 nights in Hokkaido altogether before traveling back down to Honshu. I'd say one of the great things about this tour is the opportunity to experience some Japanese culture as well as the wildlife. So when you're up in Hokkaido, we're staying in the traditional Japanese guest houses called a ryokan. And this is quite a typical room. I would set up when you arrive. Then you'll go and have your dinner, again, a delicious traditional Japanese dinner, and you come back and the staff at the hotel would have set up your bed for you. It's actually very comfortable. It looks a little Spartan, but it's actually, I found, very comfortable. The futon's very comfortable to sleep on. And the hotels up here have their own, a lot of them have their own hot springs as well, known as onsens, where you can relax after a day out in the field. And as I mentioned earlier, they serve very Japanese traditional food. Well, they're not quite so traditional, but one of my favourites of the trip up there was the strawberry and cream sandwiches, which I've never seen anywhere else in the world. So as well as sampling the traditional food, I'd recommend you try one of these for lunch. But then up in Hokkaido, the scenery is spectacular. Kauai is located in the heart of the Akan National Park, about 100 kilometres north of Kushiro. It's a park that covers over 905 square kilometres of mountains and volcanoes, birch, scrub and forest, dotted with spectacular crater lakes like this one. This is Lake Mashu, has collapsed volcanic caldera that collapsed about 32,000 years ago. Spectacular site. We'll also visit Lake Kusaro, which is frozen for the majority of the winter, but there are some warm water springs around the edge which melt areas and attract in whooper swans. And it's we'd normally arrive at the lake close to sunset, and so it's a spectacular sight to watch the sun setting behind these snow-covered mountains with the trumpeting swans in the foreground. These swans are so confiding that you can get within a couple of meters of them, and so again wonderful for the keen photographers in the group. And there's a few other birds still around in the forest in the wintertime. A lot of the breeding birds, of course, have left to warmer climates, but the lovely little long-tailed tit of the white-headed race occurs quite commonly here. There are some familiar birds actually to us in the UK, some nuthatches, marsh tits, as well as a few less familiar species like brown-eared bulbul. One of the main highlights of a trip up to Hokkaido, of course, in the winter, is the Japanese or red-crowned crane, and they gather here in the winter and to take advantage of the grain that some of the farmers put out. These are huge birds that stand over 1.5 meters tall, with a wingspan of 2.5 meters. It's thought that they were hunted to extinction back in the early 20th. So they thought they were extinct in Japan in the early 20th century. They were so heavily hunted. But in 1926, a group of about 20 cranes were found in the marshlands to the north of Kushiro, and they were protected, they were nurtured, and there are now nearly 1,000 birds. So we'll take you to a couple of there's two main feeding sites, to Eade and to Surumidai. And every day, so farmers put out some grain for the food for the cranes, and they fly in, eat the grain, and then they disperse out to the fields for the rest of the day. And you can watch these wonderful birds trumpeting to each other and displaying, again, very confiding. Within some of the birds may walk to within 10, 15, 20 meters of you. So fabulous for photography, especially with this snowy background and wonderful light. And then in the morning, on one of the mornings, we'll drag you out of bed at first light. And so to get down to the Ottawa Bridge over the Setsugawa River, as the light starts to come up and as the sun comes up, and if it's been a very cold night, you get this wonderful hoarfrost on the river, and one of the most iconic sights of a trip to Hokkaido, the red-crowned cranes out in the Setsugawa River, all surrounded and covered in hoarfrost. And there's about 100 or so cranes regularly spend the night in the river, and yeah, we'll take you down to see them. There's also swans. You sometimes see eagles as well at this spot. And after spending the morning, spending a couple of hours just watching the sunrise and the light change over this amazing scene, we'll go to Surumidai cranes, to Surumi Ito Crane Sanctuary in time for the morning feed. You'll get your last dose of the red-crowned cranes dancing and trumpeting and displaying to each other. And then we move over to the coast, to Rausu. This little fishing village, fishing town is on the edge of the Shirotoko National Park, overlooking the Sea of Okhotsk. And it's home to the highest concentrations of wintering Steller sea eagles in the world. The fishing village as well, along this whole coast, there's the whole coast is dotted with different fishing villages, each of which have long-tailed ducks and scoter and harlequin ducks in the harbour. Whilst out to sea, you might see spectacled guillemot and maybe ancient murrelet. But the main reason for coming here, as I mentioned, are the spectacular congregations of Steller sea eagles and white-tailed eagles as well. So there's only about 4,500 Steller sea eagles in the world, but a quarter of these winter along the coastline of the Shirotoko Peninsula. And it's a common sight. As soon as you get down to the coast, you see groups of Stellers and white-tailed eagles sat up in the trees, or others perched menacingly on the top of lampposts, like gulls over here, and get really close to them. So again, spectacular for photography. There are eagles that hang out around the harbour, but we'll also take you on a couple of boat trips. You don't actually have to go very far from the harbour to get great views of these birds. If the ice has come down towards Rausu at the time of the visit, then we'll take the boat out into the ice and you can see the eagles sat out on the ice. If the ice hasn't come down that far, and it varies from year to year, then the boat just goes out of the harbour and goes along the edge of the harbour wall, and you get eye to eye with these spectacular birds. One of the largest and certainly one of the most majestic birds of prey in the world. So just spectacular photographic opportunities. All these photos of the eagles and the cranes I took myself on a trip to Japan a couple of years ago, and I'm by no means a good photographer, a fairly standard camera, standard lens, but the birds, the key birds, are close and obliging. On the boat, they'll throw fish overboard, as they do up in Scotland with the white-tailed eagles. Well, up in Hokkaido, they throw the fish overboard, and you get these stellas coming down and scooping the fish right from the side of the boat, eye to eye, point blank range. And as well as the stellas, the white-tailed eagles do the same. The white-tails are pretty small. These are massive birds. So of course, in the UK, we think of them as barn doors when they fly over. But up in Hokkaido, where they're sitting next to Stella's eagles, they are dwarfed. On the trip I was on, we never got out to the pack of ice. It hadn't come down that particular winter, but we counted nearly 100 eagles all lined up on the wall at Roadshow. And you can see from this photo that you get incredibly close to them. They just moor the boat up along the side of the seawall, and you are literally eye to eye with these amazing birds. Another photo here just to illustrate the size difference between Stella's eagle and white-tailed eagles. If you think of white-tails as being massive birds, and they are of course massive, but Stella's eagle, absolutely, just a spectacular bird. And so just great for anybody with a keen interest in photographs. You can just get the most amazing photos of these incredible birds. And they breed up in north. They only winter down in Hokkaido. They move further north up into the Russian Far East and Kamchatka to nest. But along the coast here, as I mentioned before, as well as looking at the eagles, we'll stop at various harbours and bays and look for the sea duck and other wintering birds. Plenty of long-tailed duck, and the spectacular harlequin duck as well is quite common along the coastline here. And then after we looked for the eagles and we've done a bit of bird watching along the coast, in the evening we'll visit a hide just to the north of Roadshow, overlooking a little stream where a lady actually puts out fish for the Blakiston's fish owl, one of the largest, perhaps even the largest owl in the world, and one of the rarest. Has a global population of only 1,000 to 1,500 individuals, and perhaps there may only be 20 pairs in the whole of Japan. They're a spectacular bird. The hide is heated. More of somebody's, it's like more of a house really than a hide, and the area where the owls feed is floodlit as well. So we go there in the evening, and then we normally wait hopefully as long as it takes for an owl to come down. It's, you don't get them every evening, but it's quite reliable. But we appreciate this is one of the key species people want to see. So there are two shots getting Blakiston's fish owl. So up in Roadshow, and then for the final night, we stay at a really nice guest house called Daiichi Onsen, just outside a town called Uroushi. And here again, they put fish out in a little pond for the owl, and it comes down and often sits outside of the dining room window. Spectacular bird to look for there. But as outside the window in the daytime, they have feeders. Red foxes sometimes come down to the feeders, but there's also some really interesting birds: hawfinch, Japanese picnic woodpecker, brown dipper, crested kingfisher. And if you're really lucky, although they don't come down to the feeders, in the little stream just in front, they very occasionally get the very rare and elusive solitary snipe. And also, if you're very fortunate, maybe even Japanese sable. The year I went on this trip, the sable were regularly coming down to the feeders at the onsen. I understand last couple of years ago, they stopped coming down. Of course, I don't know what's happened over the past couple of years because we've not been able to run trips there. And then after our stay on Hokkaido, we fly back down to Tokyo, and from there we hop on a bullet train and take the 90-minute journey at 300 kilometers per hour to Nagano, a city on the to the west of Tokyo, near the mountainous spine of Japan. And here we go up into the hills to the Jigogadani, or Jigogadani Monkey Park, which is also known as Hell Valley. And it's here where you see the Japanese macaques bathing in the hot water, warm water springs. So these are the most northerly of all the non-human primates, very, very thick fur, adapted to the very cold winters up in the hills here. But of course, apes are very resourceful creatures, and they take advantage of the warm water to relax and warm up during the winter month. They only tend to go into the spring, and the spring here is actually a man-made spring. It's not a natural spring. They used to go, apparently, I think, go down to one of the thermal springs in a nearby hotel and get into the water there. Of course, they didn't want them down there, so they built this man-made spring a bit further up the river. Well, they only tend to go there when it's very cold. So if it's below freezing, then they will go into the water to relax. Actually, if it's slightly milder, then they tend to be mostly ferreting around on the edge. But it's spectacular to see them. Lovely to see them doing their thing, and very sort of one of the highlights of a trip to Japan. And we'll also visit, while we're in the area, visit the Zenkoji temples, one of the most important Buddhist temples in Japan. There's been a temple here since the 7th century. So which show you a little bit more of the culture as well as the wildlife. But if you want a bit of wildlife as well, in the grounds of the temple, there are often Japanese grosbeaks, bramblings, and other birds. And then we finish the tour with a trip out to Karazawa, and we explore some of the forests of Karazawa in the mountains, about an hour or so from Nagano. And this is a great area for bird watching in the winter time. And we're hoping to see Japanese waxwing feed on the mistletoe in the forest. But as well as the waxwings, we're looking for some other interesting birds: meadow bunting, Japanese accenta maybe, which looks very much like a dunnock, Japanese green woodpecker, long-tailed rosefinch. If we're very lucky, even copper pheasant, which do occur up in these forests, but are very elusive and difficult to see. I think we've had one group to date that have found copper pheasant, but there's always that possibility. So that's the main tour, and then from there we drive back to Tokyo and we fly home. But if you want to extend the trip, then recommend going down to the southern island of Kyushu. And in particular, and this is the main reason for going down here, is to look for the other crane species that winter in Japan. We fly into Kumamoto, we explore the estuaries around Yachishiro, and then we go down to Izumi, where the cranes, where the main crane feeding ground is in the winter. And we fly out of Kagoshima on the way, and then back to Tokyo and home. It's a much milder climate down here, so much milder than up further north, and a lot more wintering birds congregate on this island. So the main reason for going here is to go down to the crane centre at Izumi. We get down here in the morning, and as up in Hokkaido, they feed the cranes at the crane centre. So we stand on the top of the building and watch skein after skein, flock after flock of cranes coming in first thing in the morning. And there are over 15,000 hooded cranes winter in this area each year, as well as 2,000-3,000 white-naped cranes and a sprinkling of other species: sand-tailed crane, a few common cranes, and if you're very lucky, even Siberian white crane on occasion. And say from the top of the centre, you just get fabulous views of flocks upon flocks of cranes flying over. These are hooded cranes here, and the larger white-naped crane as well. And as long as it is that much milder down in Kyushu, there's a lot more wintering birds. This is a small flock for part of a large flock of brambling and oriental greenfinches and various other species mixed in amongst them. You might see blue rock thrush here, the rufous-bellied variety. We'll go up into the hills as well and explore the woodlands around the reservoir, where you're going to see, hopefully, genuine wild mandarin ducks. And there are crested kingfish stuff here as well. Interesting variety of birds in the woodland, and hopefully red flanked bluetail, which winter in fairly decent numbers in this particular area. So the Kagoshima or Kyushu extension is 3 nights with an additional night up in Tokyo, and we run it on some trips we run it before the main tour, on others we run it afterwards, but that option is always there. And all of our Japanese trips, as I should mention, are led by UK tour leaders and also by local guides as well. So I will end here with a nice sunset shot, and thank you very much for listening. I will now pass over to Kerry if I can work out how to unshare my screen.
I can do it for you, Paul, if you can't work it out.
Yeah, there we go.
Right,
thank you.
Just get Neil back. I've turned him off, so hopefully Neil will be back in just a moment. So thanks for that, Paul, and to Neil before you. So we've got a bit of time to answer a few questions, and I'm just going to start off by covering off a couple of more general ones that have come in on the chat, mostly around entry requirements for these countries. So at the moment, of the countries we've spoken about this evening, I think the only one we can easily travel to right now would be Cambodia. So everyone get booking to Cambodia, please. I think you just need a PCR test to get in there, so that's quite straightforward. The other countries, as it stands, are closed to tourism or require quarantine. And if that's the case, then we just won't be running those tours there. The last we heard, Malaysia was meant to be opening in January, which is nearly over. We don't know anything more, so we just have to wait and see. So this is very much about armchair travel and planning for the future, and fingers crossed by maybe later this year, next year, we'll be back to all of these marvellous countries. So what shall we answer first? I think we should go straight in with the leech question that I've got here, Tom. Are leeches a problem in Borneo?
Oh, the leech question. They're not. They shouldn't put you off. Is the very short answer. They're there. If you've had some heavy rain and you go out for a wander in the forests, there's leeches around, but they're not a problem. Keep your trousers tucked in, long sleeves. I think you even get a certificate for getting a leech, a tiger leech at one of the lodges. You might, if you get one, it's not the end of the world, but no, they're not a problem. And pretty cool things actually. Just lean out from a leaf, waiting for you to go past, and if you put your hand next to it, they sort of wiggle about and try and attach onto you. So they're quite good fun.
I quite enjoy leeches. Yeah, I had a good experience with them once. I won't say where. I don't want to put anyone off, but
yeah, they're good fun. They're good
there's no leeches in Japan in the winter.
That's a good one. Yeah, anyone's
definite leech-free trip.
Yeah,
we don't do leeches in Cambodia. I can definitely confirm that.
Fine, good stuff. Where should we go next? Once we just finished in Japan, Paul, one from Elaine. Can you do an extension to Kyoto? I think you probably can most places, can you?
Could do extensions really anywhere in Japan. Yeah, we have some people who do cultural extensions after the tour. So yes, is the answer to that question.
Yeah. Back to Tom. So a few more details on the Borneo, particularly the clouded leopard and the night excursions, I think. So what sort of time do you head out and come back on night drives, and realistic chances of seeing clouded leopards? So
it's a good question. We have around 7 hours at our disposal to get out, every night exploring the area. We'll split that up depending on how we get on. So you typically have dinner, head out for a few hours, have a bit of a break, and then push on into the early hours. Or we might do a little bit sort of early evening in the sort of, as it's just getting to dusk, and we might do a few hours in the morning. So we break it up essentially. There is some heading right into the 1-2 in the morning sessions. We've got a long time to go at it. And in terms of chances of clouded leopard, they're so hit or miss. It's probably at the moment 1 in 3, 1 in 4. So it's not, we're pretty honest with the chances, but whilst you're searching for them, you're seeing incredible amount of other rarely seen species. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's certainly not
Still
impossible, is it?
looking
You
for
know, 1 in 4 is not bad at all, really.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
straight, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Now this one, are there possibilities for rare, I think definitely rare, tiger sightings in Southeast Asia? Anyone?
I'll
Go on, Matt.
start off in Thailand. I'm not sure on the other countries, certainly not Japan, I know that. But in Thailand, the last confirmed sighting was many years ago, and is now probably thought to be extinct in Thailand. So unfortunately, Thailand is out as well for tiger sightings. I think
Anything else to offer?
head to India or Nepal on that one.
I think that's the safe bet. Yeah.
Yeah, Cambodia isn't known for tiger. I think the last tiger sighting was in the north over 20 years ago.
Still on the cats, another one for Tom. Is the leopard cat in Borneo the same as the ones in Beijing, China?
It's not now. I don't think they've split them, and they're always splitting and lumping them back together and spitting out again. So at the moment they're genetically actually 2 different species.
They may become one again in the future,
but they may become one again at some point. Yeah.
Peter Pilbeam, is Naturetrek going to be at the new Global Bird Fair in Oakham mid-July? Yes, we're very excited about it. We hope you're all going to be there. Come and say hi. We're looking forward to it. That's all the questions we've got on the Q&A. I'm just very quickly looking back through the chat just to make sure I haven't missed anything in there. Not being keen on Japanese food, Carol. Is there any alternative available? I think other than perhaps the strawberry and cream sandwiches. Although I think you could live on them because most of your major food groups are involved. You've got your carbs, you've got your dairy, you've got your fruit. But anything beyond that, Paul?
In Hokkaido, it is very traditional Japanese in the evenings, but we don't include lunches in the cost of the holiday. What we tend to do is stop at convenience stores, 7-Elevens, places like that, where you can get your strawberry and cream sandwich. And there they actually have quite a variety of different Western foods. Outside of Hokkaido, there's more of a choice of Western food as well as traditional Japanese.
Perfect. I think that about rounds things up. Not too many questions this evening. I think you must have all done fantastic talks and answered everything that anyone could possibly want to know about these wonderful countries. So thank you to everyone. Thanks to our speakers for sharing their beautiful images and their adventures with us on another dark January evening. We are next going to the USA on Monday the 31st. So if you fancy a little trip on the USA next Monday evening, do sign up on our website. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope we'll see you again soon. Have a good night.
Good night.
See you again.
Thank you.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.